Hello everybody, welcome back to Blunt Ape. I've been thinking, what a better way for you to get an insight into how I think than for me to do a good old political compass test. It may not be perfect, it may have some awkwardly worded premises, but it's the best we have for now, and it's a fun thing to do, so let's do it. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. First of all, it doesn't look to be inevitable anymore, and this whole thing has got nationalization vibes to it, so I'm gonna go with disagree. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. I don't deal in absolutes, so I'll go with strongly disagree. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. At the same time, I don't think it's foolish to be proud of your country, so disagree. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Disagree, not a big fan of determinism. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Considering how badly this can go, I'd go with strongly disagree. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Considering how meaningless international law has become, this makes very little sense, but I will still go with disagree. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I don't think there's much information left anymore. It's mainly entertainment, but it did start with a worrying mix between the two. Strongly agree. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. While I think that class divides people a lot more than many other traits and qualities, I do think that nationality has more power in dividing people. Agree. Oh, sorry, disagree. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. They're definitely interlinked. Historically, governments and central banks have tried to control inflation first and see what happens in the market. I think there's now a reverse of that, and some governments are looking to control other aspects and hoping that those will control inflation ultimately. I will go with agree. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. One doesn't always follow the other, so I will go with disagree. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. This is such a fundamentally bad idea that I think that it's been planted here as more of a joke. The freer the market, the freer the people. In theory, this can go quite badly the moment a super free market starts adopting unsavory ideas and practices. Yeah, in theory, this doesn't necessarily go in a positive direction. It's a sad reflection of our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. The alternative is to extract the water from the ground yourself, to filter it from rivers yourself, to collect it. So I'm not seeing this as a sad reflection of on our society. Disagree. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. What is the alternative to this? Government nationalizing all the land? It's happened before, it didn't end well. Land, in my opinion, should be a commodity. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to society. This is the basis of any fascist messaging, so strongly disagree. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Considering how badly protectionism has gone many times in many countries and how misguided it has become, I'll just go with disagree. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Again, similar to protectionism, corporate social responsibility policies and ESGs have misfired so badly that I'll just go with strongly agree on this one. The rich are too highly taxed. Out of principle, I will go with agree, but there's an entire discussion as to how each country taxes its people, a flat rate, a progressive rate, and so on. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Again, this is missing part of the story. If I sacrifice more in my life to attain a specific level, I think that should be rewarded with access to more things and services. Governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public. As long as government is a neutral party, it's just a mediator and doesn't have a horse in the race, I'm fine with government having that responsibility. A genuine free market requires restriction on the ability of predatory multinationals to create monopolies. There's so many economic takes on this. I would go with disagree, mainly because of how messy this is worded and all the implications. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. Again, it's dealt in an absolute manner. It's quite a contentious topic. There's way too much discussion behind this. I'll go with disagree for now. All authority should be questioned. Strongly agree. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. From what I've read, this is a bad strategy which leads to uncontrolled escalation. I think the most recommended strategy is so instead of tit for tat, tit for two tats. Disagree. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theatres or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. This is the classic public parks discussion. Disagree. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Recently, I've come to respect homeschooling a lot more. If the parents have the ability, the resources to offer education to their children, compulsory attendance would mess that up. Disagree. Agree. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. This is so stupidly worded. I'll go with disagree on the last bit of people having to stick to their own. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Again, a contentious one. Based on my upbringing, while I disagree with physical punishment, I strongly believe that children should not know that that option is off the table. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. It is natural. Strongly agree. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly agree. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation for defined jobs. I don't think that's a primary function. Primary function should be to offer children tools to understand the world around them, and it's up to them to do useful things with those tools further down the line. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Disagree. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. While that is definitely a critical one, it's not the most important one. There are no savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. Strongly agree. I think this is the whole discussion about noble savages and blank slate, and again, long discussion. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. Agree. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. In theory, this is correct. In practice as well, it's important to have a good morale, to be positive, but at the same time, if we're talking about something critical that you may risk dying from, then it's important to address it. I'll go with agree. First-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. Again, an absolute statement. I would be proof that as a first-generation immigrant, I have integrated fully, so disagree. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. This is an aspect of a proportionality, and it doesn't go both ways always. It doesn't apply, and so I would go with disagree. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. While normally I would go with strongly agree on this one. If it's a truly independent institution, then it can serve a purpose. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counter-terrorism. Strongly agree. A significant advantage to a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. While this leads to incredibly bloody outcomes, in theory, it is a correct statement. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. I think we've come to realize that this is a false premise. Strongly disagree. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. Agree. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. This makes absolutely no sense. Disagree. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. Disagree. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. There's many debates as to which one is more effective. I tend to go with punishment over rehabilitation. It's a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. At the same time, it's not a waste of time to also have rehabilitation programs, so I would go with disagree. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Considering that I've been both in my career, I would go with strongly agree. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Disagree. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Disagree. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Disagree. Astrology accurately explains many things. Strongly disagree. You cannot be moral without being religious. There's an entire discussion around this, around how morality derives from religious beliefs. Others insist on the opposite. I would go with agree. Charity is better than social security as a means of helping genuinely disadvantaged people. Given how insanely bloated most of the social security systems have become, I would go with agree. Some people are naturally unlucky. I think this is not necessarily worded correctly. It's not that they're naturally unlucky, things just happen in a random world. Disagree. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. Disagree. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Disagree. A same-sex couple in a stable living relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Agree. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Agree. What goes in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Agree. No one can feel naturally homosexual. disagree. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. If this has got to do with what we're seeing in the media, strongly agree. Now let's see where you stand. Oh, there you go. Now let's see how my result stacks up against the rest of society. I seem to be quite close to Jefferson and Friedman. I don't mind Friedman one bit. Okay, it's getting more interesting. I'm part of the good old libertarian filth. And critically, who is to blame for the world's problems in my view? The government. With these being said, I hope you join me for the next video. Have a nice one.